All right, guys, today we're going to read In Shadows of Jamestown, chapter 24. Sam's eyes opened wide. "Marcus, what are you doing?" shrieked Grace. "What I should have done before," Marcus answered. You kids don't belong here. You're only getting in the way of real science. It's a shame, too, because not only do you know about my expert pottery skills? Grace does too. He took a step toward them. I didn't see anything, really, said Grace nervously. Sure you didn't, mocked Marcus. It was you meeting someone out at the church that night, wasn't it? Said Caitlin. Oh, you saw that, did ya? Said Marcus, shifting his attention to Caitlin. Maybe you're more resourceful than I give you credit for. What have you done, Marcus? Asked Grace heatedly. Are you stealing the artifacts? How could you? I thought you believed in Jamestown. Jamestown? Marcus cackled. What is Jamestown, Grace? A bunch of holes in the ground? A 400-year-old garbage site? It's just the foundation of buildings laid by colonists who killed and ate each other in desperation. It's not helping anyone. It's merely sad. He was waving the blow rod wildly through the air like a conductor's wand. We don't learn anything from this information we're digging up. We don't make our lives better. We just keep proving that we continue to make the same foolish mistakes. He took a step closer to them, an angry gleam in his eye. So I decided to make it worth my while. If collectors on the black market want to pay big money for a crusty vase, then let them have it. That was my vase, muttered Sam. Marcus narrowed his eyes. That was my vase. No, actually, he says, Marcus narrowed his eyes. That was my vase, boy. He snarled in a deep voice. Do you know how many years I have toiled in that lab and others like it? Or how many years of schooling it took to train for this job? I've dedicated most of my life to this science, working to help others learn about the past. Do you know what it's gotten me? Nothing. There ain't riches in archaeology for lab scientists, let me tell you. So why shouldn't I get my piece? You're sick, Marcus, cried Grace. You are a disgrace to Jamestown and all it stands for. Sam shook his head. Marcus had gone crazy. They had to do something. Marcus stuck his metal rod into the ground and looked around them in the woods. All that talk about discovering America's beginnings, well, this is my part of the American way, taking what's coming to me. Noticing that Marcus had turned his attention away from them, Derek nodded at Sam and pushed Marcus to the side. Run! He yelled. With Marcus distracted, they all rushed into the glass house. Sam turned around to see Marcus picking himself up off the path, his eyes ablaze. Hide, said Derek, crouching behind one of the heavy tables near the kiln. This way, called Grace, waving Sam and Caitlin into the gift shop. She pointed to a dark corner behind a shelf filled with glassware as she crouched out of sight behind the register counter. What are we going to do? Asked Caitlin as she huddled next to Sam in the shadows. He's lost his mind. I don't know, said Sam. Just hold still. Marcus walked into the glass house, his feet stepping heavily on the old wooden boards. Sam thought back to his meeting with Marcus in the lab. Marcus had yelled at him when he'd asked to take a picture, and he did seem super concerned about keeping his lab organized. But Sam never imagined he could act this way. Sam couldn't see Derek in the other room, but he hoped he was safe. You can't hide forever, Marcus bellowed, moving slowly through the kiln room. None of this had anything to do with you, Grace. I had it all working perfectly until you started nosing around. His voice paused near the kiln. Sam peered through the wide slits in the wooden wallboards. He saw Marcus moving a lever, then heard the giant kiln click on, the one they'd watched Mariana use to heat the glass into molten lava. It hissed loudly, sucking up the natural gas into flames, growing hotter and hotter. The open door of the oven cast an eerie orange glow out into the room. Its reflection danced and leapt against the rows of glass on the shelves where they were hiding, like a funhouse room of mirrors. It was like 100 tiny flames darting all around them. Sam caught his breath as Marcus pulled another of the long glowing rods from the furnace, this one glowing bright orange. "Do you know how hot this kiln gets to melt the glass?" Marcus shouted as he walked around them, as he walked toward them, holding the rod in front of him like a sword. 2,000 degrees. Sam gulped, and Caitlin reached over and grabbed his hand. So again, Sam is showing that he's kind of a scaredy cat, and Caitlin's kind of strong and taking the lead. "The heat would kill you before you even entered the center of the kiln," Marcus continued. "Does that seem worth the trouble for some simple artifacts? No one seemed to notice my handiwork until that fool Patrick sent one of my pieces off to the Smithsonian for analysis. I'll admit that was unexpected. Without that, no one would have ever known." "I would have known," thought Sam, "because I saw my vase too." He froze as Marcus entered the gift shop. "I know you're in here," Marcus growled. He was stalking them like a tiger. Ooh, that's a figurative language. Do you guys remember what kind? Is it a simile or a metaphor? "I'm not sure what you think you're going to accomplish by trying to get in my way. You and the professor think you can take credit for everything. Well, you're not going to be the ones to bring down my career, not after all I've worked for." He suddenly shouted out, slashing the glowing rod through the air like a sword. It smashed through a full shelf of glassware and then another. Shards of colored glass flew everywhere, raining down on the floor. Sam and Caitlin covered their heads with their hands under the spray of shattered glass. Marcus leaned over the register counter and smiled. "Trapped like a rat." Ooh, that's another figurative language. He cackled, reaching down and pulling Grace up by her arm. "We have to do something," Caitlin whispered. Sam felt frozen like a stone as they crouched behind the shelf. Ooh, another figurative language. He watched Marcus pull Grace closer to him, the burning rod only inches away from her face. He could hardly look. "Why don't you pick on someone your own size, Marcus?" a voice shouted from the doorway. Derek slammed his body into Marcus, sending him smashing into a full case of glassware and stood against the wall. Marcus screamed, falling backwards as glass flew everywhere. "Run, you guys," Derek called. He reached down to help Grace up, but she'd caught a bit of the blow as well, and she seemed dazed. Sam and Caitlin jumped out of their hiding spot and ran across the glass-covered floor, broken glass crunching under their feet. They passed Marcus, who was slouched under a part of the shelf, blood dripping from his forehead. As soon as they were outside, they turned to see if Derek and Grace were behind them. Sam called out as somehow Marcus managed to reach out and grab the blow rod from the floor, striking it hard against Grace's shin as she tried to leave the room. She screamed out in pain, falling to the glass-covered floor as Marcus pulled himself up and staggered forward. Oh my God, what's going to happen? "Consider that my engagement present," he jeered, moving past her toward Derek. "Derek, come on!" called Sam, pausing with Caitlin just outside the exit. He didn't want to leave Grace, but they had to get out and call for help. Derek hesitated, looking at Grace on the ground, clutching her leg, even as Marcus lunged toward him. She looked up and waved him on. Go, I'm okay. Now, knowing what I know about Derek, he seems like somebody who would not go. He's going to go back in and take a risk and try to save Grace, I bet, knowing about what type of kid he is. Let's see what happens. Derek turned and caught up with Sam and Caitlin. They ran out of the building and up the trail. Ooh, I was totally wrong. What about Grace? Asked Caitlin. We need to draw him away from her, panted Derek. That's the only way to help her right now. Sam glanced back to see Marcus hobbling after them. Ooh, Derek was right. He must have injured his leg when he crashed into the shelves of glass. They burst out of the path toward their bikes just as a Jeep skidded to a stop on the road. Help us! Cried Caitlin. Toby leaped out of the driver's seat, running toward them. Where's Grace? Marcus has gone crazy, said Derek, pointing down the trail. Dun, 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 dun.